Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 107 of Mr. Robin's Hood podcast. We are broadcasting today from Studio C, where we are just under one errant wedge shot through the front window of hole number 2 of the Woodward Municipal Golf Course. It is I, your fearless co-host and all-around somewhat wonky podcaster, Robin Hohweiler, or Mr. Robin to you. I'm joined by my effervescent co-host, who is frequently mistaken for Miss Teen Oklahoma, my best pal forever and all-around philosophical pain in my ass, the one, the only, Mikel Mauree Robinson, known throughout the podcasting uni as Mikey on the mic.
Hi. Do I look like a teenager still? Cool.
Yeah.
He's got the finger out. Ooh, what's he going to do with that?
Before we get started today, I should probably address the situation involving Mikey, a tractor, and what authorities are now calling an excessive commitment to topsoil.
Yes, I am excessively committed to topsoil.
Now,
always.
Most people support soil conservation in a quiet, reasonable way.
Not Mikey. I don't do anything quiet and reasonable.
They might plant cover crops, maybe attend a workshop, read a pamphlet. Not Mikey. Mikey decided Oklahoma's soil erosion prevention programs required immediate action and apparently a manifesto.
A manifesto.
According to witnesses, she spent 3 weeks living undercover as a scarecrow in a wheat field outside of Enid.
Yes.
Farmers became suspicious because, well, farmers don't usually put scarecrows up in wheat fields.
Since when?
So their suspicions were confirmed when the quote-unquote scarecrow kept stapling corrected crop rotation strategies to fence posts and leaving boxes of educational brochures in random fields.
I was thinking my next step was to be taping them to mailboxes along the county roads.
Oh, well, there you go.
My next plan of action.
Okay. Things escalated from there.
As they always do.
Last Tuesday, Mikey allegedly chained herself to a combine harvester while wearing a cape made entirely of burlap grain sack.
And the poor guys from South America were like, what is this? You know what doing? They'd never seen anything like it before.
Across the front of her shirt was painted the phrase, "No farm, no food, no future, no excuses."
And I rapped the gavel.
Across the back of the cape, she had printed, "Ask me about terracing."
Ask me about it. Ask me about terracing.
She then
That's how I want you to read that. Okay. Ask me about terracing.
So she then delivered what one sheriff's deputy described as the most passionate 20-minute speech about contour farming ever heard by human ears.
I want you all to know this is like up there with Temple Houston's soiled dove speech, except it's the soiled soil speech.
Yeah, the soiled soil speech.
And you heard it here first, folks.
By noon, she had assembled a small army of supporters consisting of 3 retired FFA teachers, a confused UPS driver,
who I drugged,
2 goats, and a guy who thought the gathering was a pop-up farmer's market.
His name was Eugene. He was a sucker.
At one point, she climbed onto a hay bale and declared herself the guardian of the Great Plains topsoil.
Yes, that's right.
Protector of all dirt that wished to remain in its current zip code.
Oh, shoot.
Authorities
doesn't get washed away. Oh, that's where the terracing comes in.
Authorities finally intervened after she attempted to place every loose handful of soil she could find into what she called a protective witness relocation program. Actually, it was a zip-top baggie that she had stuffed into her pocket.
Yeah.
When questioned...
But I had the coat of many pockets.
There you go. There you go. When questioned, Mikey reportedly pointed at a freshly plowed field and shouted, "Do you know how long it takes nature to make 1 inch of topsoil? Longer than it takes you people to make a bad decision."
Quite a bit longer, actually. Because in my experience,
that's hard to argue with.
My bad decisions are very instant and bullshit.
Yeah, the good news is no one was injured.
No one was injured.
The bad news is Mikey is now
There's bad news?
Mikey is banned from 3 county extension offices, 2 farm supply stores, and a surprisingly large number of agricultural Facebook.
And that is after the county extension office hired me to do a native gardening class for these kids. We did a little workshop, and they thought I was normal then. They really learned, and now I'm kicked out.
Yeah. Which brings us to today's episode, Soil Conservation in Oklahoma. Why protecting the ground beneath our feet matters, how farmers and ranchers are working to preserve it, and why you should never give Mikey access to a megaphone, a tractor, or a detailed map of the Dust Bowl.
Yes.
Well, let's get started. So this episode is another in our occasional series, Working 2026. And we're joined today by another seriously overachieving professional, Dr. Sam Stalcup of Oklahoma City. Sam has a history PhD from the University of Oklahoma. He has done time in hell, which is my personal term for anyone who has actually had to live and work in Washington, D.C., where he was an historian with the Natural Resources Conservation Service of the Department of Agriculture. Sam is also the director of the Oklahoma County Conservation District and serves on the board of the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, which is how Mikey and I came to know him when OCHS came to this area with their traveling exhibit that was displayed at the museum here, which I guess was a couple of summers ago.
Yeah, I know. It seems like it hasn't been that long, but it's been a good 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah. Welcome, Sam, and happy Father's Day.
Hey, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon.
Yeah. I was actually really excited when Mikey told me that you were going to be joining us for a podcast. I actually have a long, distinguished history with conservation in Oklahoma. My dad was, for years, was on the board of the Woodward County Conservation District. And my grandfather, interestingly, when I was a little guy, he worked for Farm Bureau. And he would get these satellite photos. They were just monsters. They were like, I don't know, it was probably 3 by 3 feet. And he would carry them around in his truck, and he'd have to go out and visit farmers that had too much land in production than what they had agreed to do. And he was the enforcer that would have to tell them they had to plow some of it up. So I'm really pleased that you're able to come on here. And we'll just start this off, if I may, by asking, how did you first become interested in conservation history, and what led you to serve on the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I feel like I came at this kind of sideways. Like I grew up in South Tulsa, so I was like a suburban kid, and then in high school, my family moved to Ponca City, and that's where I graduated high school and maybe had more encounters with like rural Oklahoma there. And but I went to school at the University of Oklahoma, and was a history major. I was a zoology degree there as well, but I feel like history was always a passion, and I sort of liked the idea of trying to blend history with science. And so my focus in grad school was environmental history, which is a like a subfield.
Mm-hmm.
And so, kind of through that process, my advisor, and this would have been the summer 2006, he called me into his office and he asked me if had these summer plans, and I said no, I don't. He's like, well, my friend Douglas Helms, who was a historian at NRCS and had been the historian for the Soil Conservation Service, was looking for an intern. And he was like, you're my only single graduate student, so I'm going to put your name forward if you're interested. And I was like, well, that's great. I'm certainly happy to do that. So I spent the summer of 2006 as an intern at NRCS. And that was really my first exposure to the whole world of soil and water conservation within the USDA and the Conservation Partnership, and just started to learn about everything then. And so I came back for a second summer, and then I was offered a job. And so I worked for NRCS for about 4 years before coming back. Yeah, to Oklahoma. So
yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I wrote my dissertation on the history of soil conservation in the United States.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Speaking of writing something, I have a fun tidbit about my little bit of connection to conservation. So I like you, Sam, I was born in Tulsa. We moved to Wichita, and when I was 8 years old, we moved to a really small town of about 400 people called Protection, Kansas. And in the 5th grade, we did this whole thing on conservation. We went to Alabaster Caverns, and we went out to some farming land, and they had this whole thing. And at the end of the program, we wrote a essay on conservation, and I wrote it about a creek. And I remember going to the creek, sitting there and writing my notes, and I ended up winning this conservation essay in the 5th grade. And they sent a letter to my mom and said, hey, your son won. Which is another fun part about that, because everybody always thinks I'm a dude based on my name. But I had to get up there and read my essay in front of people, and that was the hardest thing I remember ever doing at that age. But anyway, it's just a fun little piece. I was kind of obsessed with the whole thing we did at school, and really went in and wrote that essay from my heart. And I won. I got this cool little trophy and everything. So
you probably still
that's great.
I still have the trophy. Yeah. My mom still has the essay. Actually, she pulled it out the other day, and she was like, oh, look, and this is when they thought you were a guy. Thanks, Mom. You did this to me. But anyway, well, that's really interesting, Sam, about kind of your the way you found conservation. And then you, like I said, we had met you through the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society. So when did you kind of get pulled in there?
So I went to first time I went to a meeting was, I think, in early February, or like 2018, I think February.
Oh, okay.
2018. And I had got an email from Larry Caldwell, who was a long time the NRCS state engineer for Oklahoma. And I had met him in Washington, D.C. And so he's sort of the national watershed guy. And he reached out to me, and he said, hey, we're trying to put together this group for Oklahoma to tell the story of our conservation history. And I was like, that sounds great, So went to that first meeting, and I kept going back to meetings, and then they put me on the board. And so we've been having a lot of fun with it since then. So it's been almost 10 years, I guess, since since our group has been in operation. It just seems to continue to grow. And It's been a lot of fun. Been a nice opportunity. Our goal is to tell the story, soil and water conservation in Oklahoma in many ways as we can. So that's what we're trying to do.
Right. Well, and why is that mission important today? What would you say about that?
So, I mean, I guess one, I don't think most people have ever heard of it. Of SCS or
Right.
NRCS or conservation districts or the Oklahoma Conservation Commission. Like, if you ask them about these things, it's sort of, they maybe heard of like the Dust Bowl, or if they're like an agricultural background, they'll like have some knowledge of, the conservation practices or, SCS. But, it's sort of, in the United States and especially in Oklahoma, where like 98% of our land is privately owned, how do we address environmental issues and conservation issues, on privately owned land? And the answer there is the conservation partnership. And so I think it's just trying to tell the sort of the story of how these different entities, how they work together to achieve common goals. And, it's important. I think it's as important as ever. Sometimes I say, when people ask me about why history is important, I'll say that times change, but resource challenges remain. And I think like that's the case. I mean, it's soil, water, like wildlife habitat, invasive species. There's a whole suite of issues that we have to continue to address. Every generation has to address it for themselves, and I think when we look at the past, it sort of will inform how we do that in the in the present moment now. Right. So I guess
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I thought you might say, because I'm always big in telling people, like, if they don't know, then they don't know how to move through it. So if they're not educated on those things that fall into conservation or the history behind it, they don't know how to make those educated decisions. They don't know what's invasive and what's hurting, the environment, and maybe also making roadblocks for them and their and working their land and doing what they need to do for their property. So I'm always big in, educating people on those types of things, because I think a lot of it just comes from they don't know. Not that if they knew, they would maybe be more apt to following those things that are good, and are helping the conservation, because it is important. Because if you don't conserve it, then it it can be bad, as I'm sure you can attest to.
Well, and I think you made an important point there, that there's just a lot of people that don't realize, all of these organizations or resources that are out there. For instance, I was living in D.C. for so long, but when I came back to Oklahoma in 2015 and learned my father was serving on the board of the Woodward County Conservation District, I was surprised because I had never heard of that before. And I was wondering if you could maybe just kind of talk a little bit about how the Oklahoma conservation districts kind of tie in with the work you do at OCHS.
Okay, so let's go back in time a little bit and just sort of talk about where conservation districts come from. So in the 1930s, there was a major national push to address, what they considered the soil erosion crisis. And I think we all know about the Dust Bowl, but there was also the issue of water, like erosion. So like gully erosion, sheet erosion, just like washing the topsoil, like sedimentation of streams. So that was like a huge issue. When you look at photos of that time, just like gully scarred landscapes. And anyway, so that's sort of, I could go on and on about that. But so there's when Soil Conservation Service was first established, they operated on these watershed demonstration projects. So they had these the projects would encompass like all the farms and ranches and like whole watersheds, and they would do this comprehensive like conservation planning, from the ridge down to like the river valley. And so they had CCC labor, the WPA labor. So it was like these huge projects. But we had 10 of these in Oklahoma, and like they did like a lot of good, but like we have a huge state. And so these 10 projects overall were just like a small percentage of like cultivated acres in the state of Oklahoma. So the question that New Deal administrators ask themselves is like, how do we extend this conservation program across the whole country, across like entire states? And so the answer was soil conservation districts. And they also saw that for it to succeed, it couldn't be like a top down, like Washington, D.C., like regulatory approach. It needed to be like a bottom up, like locally led, like small d democratic approach. And so that's the idea of the conservation district. So you're going to empower like local people to make decisions for themselves on how to administer these conservation programs. Like in partnership with the Soil Conservation Service and their technical staff that did the conservation planning and continue to do the conservation planning work on farms and ranches. So in Oklahoma, we passed it's called Senate Bill 208 in 1937 that authorized the formation of these conservation districts. And those began to be formed in the 30s and in the 40s. And I think the last conservation districts in Oklahoma were formed like in the 1950s. And so today we have 84 districts in the state. And these are the local partner with the state and the federal partners that work together in this sort of like the three legs of the conservation partnership stool. And we're, and I'm on the board of the Oklahoma County Conservation District. And so, we are tasked with getting conservation program dollars out the door for our producers, and also working with our local communities to evaluate needs and set, our priorities for the work at the conservation districts. So may have gone off track there with the question. So I don't know if you have,
No, I think you're doing fine. You're basically talking about the Oklahoma conservation districts, what they are for people that may not know. I mean, we may have listeners that have no idea what we're talking about. So kind of doing the background on that to kind of explain how those work and what the goal of those are.
And how the Historical Society kind of ties into that,
in, yeah.
Which you actually answered because it goes all the way back to the 30s.
Yeah. Yeah, and we, the Historical Society, want to tell the story of the conservation districts and the important work that the conservation districts do and have done over the years. And so I'd say, that's sort of like the relationship now. And I guess I would say for me as an historian, it's been interesting to be someone who has sort of kind of studied all of these things from like an outsider, like academic perspective, but now kind of like stepping in as a participant and almost like a character in the story that I've been telling. So it's been interesting. I think it sort of brought lens, like I have a different perspective on these things than perhaps like a lot of other people do in the conservation world.
Sure. And you mentioned that there were 84 conservation districts. I'm assuming that includes the tribal
Yes, it does. And so there's been as many as like 88, and some have sort of merged or closed. And so these things, they're not like fixed and forever. They do have to like evolve and continue.
Right.
Sure.
To be relevant.
Right.
And I think it's also worth saying that now, like a lot of the districts are sort of organized like along county lines, but whenever they were first established, there were many that were organized like along watersheds as sort of like a planning unit. So we still have some of that. There's a few like the Upper Washita, like the Deer Creek Conservation District. So yeah, that's
interesting. So Sam, in all of this work that you've done, what would you say, or maybe there's several really fascinating stories that you've uncovered through your work with the society? So stories could mean anything, just whatever you think would be what you would say is the most fascinating thing you've come up with. That may be a hard question.
Well, so okay, like I'll choose two, and one is from like 1940s, 1950s, and so, and I think I say both, and then the other will be like 1970s, 1980s.
Okay.
So I think that the strength of the conservation partnership is that it brings together a lot of different stakeholders with different skills, different assets. And so, one of the big concerns coming out of the Dust Bowl period is like, how do we prevent this marginal land from blowing again? And so one of the key conservation practices of that time was revegetation of, the most marginal land that's not fit for agriculture, revegetation with native grasses. And so, and that's, it's one thing to say that, it's quite another to put hundreds of thousands of acres back into grass. And so there is this development of conservation districts work to grow the seed, and they harvested the seed, and they worked with the farmers and ranchers to distribute the seed. Then we also have there was like an SCS there was like a research station in Woodward, I believe, and they developed like a seed drill for these like native grass seeds that could be used, pulled behind like a tractor and sort of used to like reseed the land. And so, and then you had sort of, and then SCS conservation planners work with, each landowner to determine whether revegetation should occur, all those kinds of things. So it was sort of this big group effort, and it's sort of all working together. Well, then you also had sort of interesting story too. You had these kind of small town machine shops that would sort of take the design and kind of fabricate these seed drills, and then the conservation district would have the drill, and if you were a farmer, you could go and borrow it, and you could use it, and then return it. So I think it's just an example of the partnership in action. And that's and then so the other example is in the 1970s there was sort of this new concern for environmental quality that comes out of the post-war years. This as a country, we sort of experienced this unprecedented prosperity, and there were sort of new values and new demands of what we wanted out of our natural environment. For many years in Oklahoma, our towns and cities and factories, we just released waste into our rivers and streams.
Right.
That's the way things were done. It's kind of mind-boggling now to imagine that. But so water quality and the Clean Water Act sort of delegated authority to the states to sort of and like had funding in place to sort of how do we sort of improve water quality. And there's kind of like a lot of details, but that I kind of skip over. But in the 1980s, like amendments to the Clean Water Act sort of, and then our state like made the Oklahoma Conservation Commission responsible for non-point source pollution in our state. And so through working with conservation districts, we've instituted like a monitoring program where we sort of know what the base levels are in the streams, or like what's in there, and then working with like landowners and to sort of these conservation programs to like mitigate the pollution. I think we've had like a lot of success in Oklahoma getting streams off of the EPA's the impaired stream list. So, that's an example there. There's probably, I think soil health is like a new example where it's sort of this kind of focus on like building up soil as sort of like a living system.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's an exciting frontier as well. Like another one would be like eastern red cedar, like a huge issue. And so the conservation partnership has kind of gone into action, really just trying to like address that issue and like, get these cedars off the landscape. So,
yeah, because they are very, very invasive and they suck a lot of water. And I don't know that everybody realizes that, but
we're trying to get the message out, it's an important issue.
It is. I will say that I've got some, and then they're not eastern red cedars, but I've got some cedars on my property, and my property was in the county until the 50s, and I'm actually not far from the USD research station that you referenced. Mm-hmm. And the needles that fall off of those, and I've been cleaning up some spaces. The soil in those areas under those cedars, I can't believe how rich that soil is. And I'm like, oh, but these are invasive. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there looking at the soil. I can tell by the color of it, if you know anything about that sort of thing. And I know not everybody does. But
there's other kinds of mulch. There's other kinds of mulch that you can use too, if you want to.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm just like, somebody who doesn't know that that's invasive, and they see that kind of mulch coming from, they may misconceive that as being good.
Yeah, I mean, like my mom, she's not like a conservation person, but she lives on some acres, and like she loved those trees. She's like, oh, these are really pretty trees in my landscape. I'm like, well, you kind of other trees that would like benefit, the ecosystem. Yeah,
much better. Yeah, for sure. And I totally know that myself, and I'm just like sitting there like, okay, yeah, I know this looks great, but these are a menace to what you got going on. Because I'm trying to, even though I live in town, I have 2 lots that are completely empty, and I'm trying to move them all to native things that will bring the right type of ecosystem,
like pollinators and all that.
Absolutely. The milkweed's a big one. I feel the same way kind of about the the monarchs and the organization Save the Monarchs. It's in Oklahoma. Their mission to kind of help with that. That's kind of what this reminds me of as well. And I've been going to some of their stuff and researching, because I go down rabbit holes because I'm so interested in stuff, and I'll just do a bunch of research just for myself to know. And there are a lot of things I didn't know, plants that I had that are, poisonous. And I'm like, oh my gosh, because it comes down to just not knowing. So these organizations educating people, just like the OCHS is trying to do, is huge, I think, in making that change and getting people on board with the things to practice that are not detrimental. Because a lot of times I think they just don't know what they're doing is bad.
Yeah, I mean, especially, in Oklahoma, most people live in like a city or a town. And, like 90 years ago, there was like a lot more people out on the landscape, like, like in agriculture, and they sort of maybe had a more like intuitive understanding of the issues. Whereas like now, I mean, we're trying to, our agricultural producers are important partners and they know what's going on. Mm-hmm. But, just like town and city people, I mean, we need like their support too for these like state and federal programs, and also things that they can do in an urban context. That's like an issue set that is very like important to me in Oklahoma County, and I live in the heart of Oklahoma City, so I sort of have like an urban perspective on conservation issues.
Yeah, and there's small things you can do, like replacing invasive species with non-invasive and things that are native to the area. But you also find that it's less work. As I've been moving, the things that I've been planting need less attention because they're supposed to be here.
Absolutely.
And they're thriving. Like we went out to Robin's got some property and it had rained a couple of Mays back, and we walked out there, and I'm taken, as a photographer, and I love the Oklahoma landscape. I mean, I just love landscape in general, but Oklahoma is beautiful in its own regard to me. And I'm capturing, I mean, there's purple thistles and white thistles and all this bugs and all these different native plants, and it was just this amazing like walk through out to the ridge is what they call it.
Yeah.
Out there, and it's in Fargo that he lives out in the country, and I'm just like, this is amazing. Like this right now, being in this space where things are growing because they're supposed to.
Yeah.
It was just amazing to see and be a part of, and just because you think that one tropical plant's pretty doesn't mean that it actually is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And it's just trying to reach like one person at a time, or with like a room full of people at a time. And I think once people kind of like see what's going on, like they get hit to it, like they like the idea. Where I live in Oklahoma City, there's like a lot of people that are taking out the Bermuda grass lawn and trying to put in like native wildflowers, native grasses, and because it's more interesting looking and like less water. It's not for everybody. I do recognize that sort of thing because not for everybody, but it's exciting to see that like it is happening.
Yeah, and I feel like it's happening a lot more these days, and I think I know it's due to organizations like the OCHS and the Save the Monarchs and people that are educating people on what's good for the land here in Oklahoma, and people want to do that, and not everybody will completely understand it, and that's okay. We're not gonna shame them on the podcast here, but just have them recognize that. So some more questions we have that kind of falls into like the conservation legacy. How do you think people think about Oklahoma history? Do they often think about oil, cattle, and the Dust Bowl, or maybe something else? And how important is conservation to Oklahoma's story? And
that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. I mean, I think like a lot of people probably have a pretty like basic understanding of like our state, and so much of the state's history is kind of like wrapped up like in land. Like the land runs this sort of like kind of movement to open like Indian territory to settlers. like allotment, which is, the process by which like the tribes had to, their lands were like taken from them and like divided up and sold. And so like land and the use of land goes back to the beginning. It's like a through line, I think, in our state. I mean, there's only about like 4 million people in the state of Oklahoma, and it's a huge state. So land and private land ownership is sort of one of the defining characteristics of like state history. And like so like the use of land. And so I've been doing some work kind of going back into old newspapers and trying to understand how people thought about like soils and conservation then, and not, I'm kind of surprised. I've actually found things from like the 1890s sort of, like encouraging farmers to terrace their land. And so with the formation of the extension service at Oklahoma A&M and county agents after 1914, they were working with farmers to like install terraces. But there was a famous survey done like in 1930 as the soil conservation kind of movement is kind of getting going, where it found out of 16 million cultivated acres in Oklahoma, 13 million acres had like erosion damage. So 13 out of 16. So and only like 2% of that land had like any terraces on it. So it's sort of, despite like awareness of the problem, and then like really almost 20 years of trying to like encourage farmers to adopt terraces, you just had really pretty minimal headway. And so that sort of kind of leads into the story I begin to tell kind of earlier with the Soil Conservation Service and sort of, getting this like state apparatus involved. And that's kind of getting like the power of the national government and the state government behind it is what it kind of has kind of taken to get, what it took to get like conservation on the ground, really. And so, how does that play? I mean, I think it's been like a big part of Oklahoma history. And, I would argue that like every chapter of like our state's history, this like conservation partnership has been a part of it. It has evolved alongside like our state is sort of like an expression of like larger themes in the society and the culture at the time. So, and, that continues to be the case. And so, I just want to just kind of, like emphasize the importance of the conservation partnership, and also to emphasize that the resource challenges don't go away. They're still here, and we still have to find ways to address them within like this framework that we have. And I guess, yeah, so I guess that's my answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Yeah, I feel like, it's an ever evolving and ever changing kind of thing. Conservation is not something you can solve. It's something that you just have to help along and adapt when things change. Because, I mean, one thing I've learned about nature, because I love nature so much, it's something that resonates very deeply within me, is the resilience of it, right? But at the same time, it needs help along the way. If we're helping it backwards, so to speak, and over farming or things, that are detrimental to it, it's going to struggle. And conservation is made to help it. Like, the partnership that you keep talking about, I feel like is also within the farmers and their partnership with their own land as well. So
yeah, that's right.
Speaking of the Dust Bowl, Robin, myself, and Tom Lucas, Tom actually brought this to us, and you guys have supported in getting the book out there to the younger generations, to tell the story from people's own perspectives or from their family's perspective. And we put together what we call the Remembering the Dust Bowl, and it was a commemoratory thing we did for the 90th celebration or anniversary. I don't know if it's really a celebration, but the anniversary of Black Sunday. And one thing I kind of was curious in talking about that is in your eyes, what lessons did Oklahomans learn from the Dust Bowl era that still influence land management today?
It's interesting. Like, so I have a copy of your book right now in my hand. I see it's like a signed copy too. So what you guys put together is like an important document because it's sort of the voices of the people who, if they didn't experience it, they had like family members who experienced this environmental, really just a catastrophe, especially if you were out like in Cimarron County and like Texas County. I mean, that was sort of like the epicenter of this like decade plus event. And, I think we tend to focus on like Black Sunday, and there's like, some other storms, and that kind of sort of becomes like a kind of like a shorthand for this event. But I think it's important for people to understand that for this decade long time frame, there would be like dozens of storms like that. It'd be like, in the spring and in the winter. I mean, it was like pretty constant. And it just like, it's hard to imagine really how that would kind of wear on like your faith and like things going on around you. I mean, it's pretty like remarkable story. And my grandparents on my dad's side, they farmed in Liberal, Kansas. And so my great grandparents on that side and my grandparents. So I kind of grew up like hearing about the Dust Bowl. So it was sort of part of my own family kind of history. And so that's informs my perspective on this too.
Right.
And I think that for the people who endured it and then stayed and continued to farm, like a lasting legacy of that is, I feel like Western Oklahoma in particular, like they're very like up to date on like farming practices. They adopt new technologies, try to work to implement like more efficient operations. And I think that is just one, it's sort of trying to operate in, in the plains environment, which can be very challenging. Mm-hmm. But also I think it's sort of like having lived through that, or being like parents or grandparents having experienced that. They, really do have like a unique like stewardship ethic, like in Western Oklahoma. And I think it's, it's an important characteristic of like that region of our state. So.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. One thing Robin didn't mention is he lives on a Centennial farm. His family, homesteaded and farmed, all the way up until recently. Robin's not a farmer.
No.
No, but
after living in the nation's capital area for so long. I started back here, and I think my dad was hoping I would step in. He had given up farming.
Oh yeah, he
just realized there's no longer any money to be made in it. You're just there's no money in it. So he stuck with the cattle. And when I decided to move back here in 2015, I think he was kind of hoping that I would have come back a little bit earlier, because he finally got to a point. We were in the middle of a drought at the time, and he got to a point, and it was sometime around, I don't even remember, it's probably 2012, 2013, something like that. He fed his last bale of hay And he said, okay, that's it. He got tired of waiting for me, and he loaded up the cattle and took them to town. And we've had people that have leased that range out there. And for the most part, Dad had some pretty good tenants, people that understood, solid best practices in conservation, and they took care of the land, and that was really gratifying for me to see that. And again, I have no interest in taking up farming or cattle. I'll watch somebody else do it.
But he's hanging on to that land, in other words. Yeah. He's hanging on to it and, keeping that legacy going as far as that goes.
In fact, I started a rumor.
Oh, yeah.
When I took it over. Because, you get a lot of those old farmers,
small town stuff.
Cattlemen, they all kind of compare notes. And I started a rumor that I was starting a coyote rescue place. And that actually spread. People
did.
Actually believed that.
Somebody asked me about it because
astounded me.
They know Robin and I are pals, and they're like, "Is he really doing that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna play along. This is super fun."
Sure, why not? Yeah.
Well, but just fun little add-ins there. But to get back to some questions for you, Sam, do you think, or are there any Oklahoma conservation pioneers whose contributions deserve more recognition?
Yeah, I do. So just like a few off the top of my head would be like Red Males from Cheyenne, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. He was an important figure in the 30s and the 40s and sort of promoting the Ouachita River Watershed Project, which, I don't know how much you know about the small watershed program. It's sort of construction of these upstream reservoirs to hold water in the headwaters, and that also combined with like land treatment with conservation practices. And it's sort of so Red Males is an important figure in that, and sort of a real mover and like a shaker in the rural Oklahoma. So like great example of local leadership and really having like a national impact. Like another example would be Richard Longmire of Paul's Valley, just like a real like early champion for conservation districts and conservation programs in Oklahoma. In the 50s, he went to Washington and met with Dwight D. Eisenhower when he was president, and sort of put in his word to get like the national small watershed program into law. And he had Eisenhower's backing on that. So just like an important figure. Like another would be Nolan Fuqua of Duncan, Oklahoma, just sort of like a titan of Oklahoma conservation leadership. He was like a national leader in the National Association of Conservation Districts. And so, people like them really have helped to make Oklahoma as a national leader, like in conservation. And I think that we as Oklahomans can be proud of our role in conservation history. And I think the reason that we are so strong, I think, and that we continue to believe as a state in the importance of conservation is that in the first 30 years of our existence, I mean, we really did have these sort of like had a soil erosion crisis, and there was like a real crisis on the land, and it sort of, I think that is sort of the roots of our strong conservation system here today. So those are three examples. I'm sure there's more. Those are just kind of three of
They kind of pop into your head first.
There are definitely more. Right. Yeah, I mean, there's more popping into my head now, but
we could be here all day, huh? Right?
Yeah, I put those guys on the Mount Rushmore of Oklahoma conservation.
That's a good way to put it. And we keep talking about soil erosion, but I don't know that everybody's going to know exactly what you mean by that. And we have a question here that we're going to ask that I feel like kind of ties in, and it is, why is soil conservation so critical? And maybe talk a little bit about the what actually soil erosion is, lead into why the conservation of soil is critical, especially in a state like Oklahoma.
Yeah, so I should caveat this with the statement that I'm a historian, not like a soil scientist. So we know a little bit about a lot of things, but so soil, especially like the top like 10 inches like of topsoil, because that's where like most of the fertility lies. That's where like crops are gonna draw their the nutrients they need to grow.
Mhm.
Well, the topsoil just takes exceedingly long to form. So, in the plains and like, in Oklahoma, it's like you'd have, like before settlement, you'd have these extensive grasslands. So you have like a layer of soil that have been formed through, plant growth, and then plants die back and then can decompose, and there's like soil life in the soil, countless microorganisms, fungi, bacteria, that they all kind of work together to create this like living matrix of life and chemical nutrients within the top foot of the soil. And so you can imagine when the farmer arrives and plows up vegetative cover on the land and you just expose the bare soil. It's fine the first season, plant the crop, harvest the crop, then you have like a bare field. And if like a lot of cases in Oklahoma, that field is going to be on some sloping ground, and then it rains. And then the rain carries particles of the soil away with it. And so over time, depending on the type of the soil, the location, sort of like slope, and all these things, you begin to lose those valuable, layers of topsoil. And, by 1930, there had been over like 1 million acres of land just like abandoned in Oklahoma because the topsoil had been washed off.
Right.
And so that's sort of what I'm talking about here with soil erosion. It's a complex process. And again, like, this is sort of just like a thumbnail sketch of what the issue is.
Right. Just to give people an idea that may know absolutely nothing about it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a challenge for like soil conservationists, because it's sort of like, how do you ensure agricultural productivity? How do we use the soil while also like protecting it from erosion? And so like the first conservation practices are really trying to like work through how to like resolve the tension between like use and preservation. So so that's where like terraces come in. There's like things like strip cropping, and then like mid-century you start to get like stubble mulching, some of the first like kind of no-till techniques. And these are all sort of kind of ways to like keep a living root, or keep like a root system in the soil to hold it, but then also use the soil to grow like our cash crops.
Right.
And it's also too, we've learned to like, let's only farm like the very best soils, the areas that are like are most suitable for agriculture. And if it's like a marginal soil or just not like a hillside, it's like put that into something else. And so yeah, that's like a shorthand answer of that. And hopefully I didn't get myself into too much trouble if there's any soil scientists out there.
We happen to know one. Robin's looking at me like, who?
Oh no.
And I made him dig a hole in my paradise one time and tell me how my soil was. It was funny. He was like, okay. I'm like, well, I'm kind of obsessed with growing things, and I want your professional opinion. But anyway, you don't have to be a soil scientist always to know that it either looks good or it doesn't. You know what I mean? But it's interesting.
From a historical perspective, I mean, we'll look at this historically. Were there any historical conservation efforts that you can think of that failed but still taught valuable lessons?
Conservation efforts that failed, but that's a great question. I keep going back to sort of this like very earliest kind of period, because that's what I've been doing like my most recent research on. And with the creation of the Extension Service and county agents, these guys were going out. And so I'm thinking like 1914 through like, the early 30s. Like the county agent is sort of tasked with taking like agricultural knowledge, like knowledge of like conservation, but also just like crop rotation, like seed varieties, what's best suited, when to plant, if you have like a home garden, how to can, how to like home economics. So like these guys were really trying to like educate like rural Oklahomans on like how to, optimize their farms. And so like as part of that was like this terracing demonstration work. And so if you go back into like just like the newspaper archives, which I've done from the 20s, you just find countless articles of these terracing demonstrations. And so like the county agent would extol the virtues of like a terrace. And like what a terrace does is sort of just on like a sloping like hillside, it just like you grade it so that the water, you just control the flow of the water off of the land, or you can, and and like they largely worked for whatever it was worth. But so I guess, did these fail? I mean, I don't think that like the terraces themselves failed, but they just were not like widely adopted, because just like I think for like a lot of farmers, the like incentives were to just get what you could now to pay the bills. If you're like a tenant, or you're like in debt, or you're like a homesteader trying to like prove up the land, like the short-term incentives sort of like outweighed like the longer term incentives of like investing in its conservation practices. And so I think, and it was sort of this reliance on enlightened self-interest of like the individual farmer to adopt these conservation practices. And like, did that fail? I don't necessarily think so. I mean, it's such like a harsh word to say, but like it didn't work. Like a demonstration, enlightened self-interest, like it didn't work. And so that's what brings this like more muscular like New Deal response, and sort of the creation of these institutions that we have now. And it's always like a challenge. I mean, I think only about a third of Oklahoma farmers even use conservation programs now. So it's like, there's always like a challenge to try to like encourage our producers to like adopt these practices.
I'm curious what that's like when you're, talking and trying to partner with these producers. What do you feel like is the thing that's kind of holding them back in your, eyes? Like what is it you think that's not connecting them with what you're proposing? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's probably different for everybody, but I mean, if I had to hazard a guess, I mean, it probably comes down to like time and money.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like old habits die hard too. Sort of like a cleanly plowed field has sort of like a certain like aesthetic appeal to it, like neat lines and kind of whatnot, versus sort of like a field like with stubble still in it, looks kind of messy. It's like, but that clean tilled field is like gonna erode. And
sure.
So but that's a great question. I mean, it's sort of just like one of the big questions.
Right. You're like, we're still questioning.
Yeah. And it's, yeah.
I get it. That may be one of those questions is you don't really have like a good solid answer to. There's so many moving parts and things that go into that maybe like you said, the easiest way is it comes down to just time and money, and that's huge for people in that industry.
Yeah, and it's also too, I think like it takes sort of like a conservation ethic, and that's sort of like an intangible thing, but just like a belief in like the importance of like stewarding like the resource. And that's why like soil conservation has always had this sort of like moral component to it, like why this is like the right thing to do. And it's sort of beyond just like dollars and cents, I guess.
Right.
Sort of like appeals to this like higher motivation, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now we're really going to hit your history background here, but there with the Historical Society, what is the most unusual artifact, document, or photograph that you've encountered?
It's always fun to like encounter these like primary sources. I mean, like as a historian, that's probably like my favorite thing is to sort of get like new pile of photos or like a file of documents just to sort of see and just like to read like what people were talking about then, because we can generalize or have like ideas, but it's important to just go back and look and see what what was being said, how did people feel, how were they like experiencing these things then. And one of the projects like I'm most proud of that OCHS has done is we worked with NRCS and the conservation districts and the Oklahoma Historical Society, and sort of got all of these. So SCS had they employed photographers, and they would go out and just take pictures of conservation practices or kind of projects. And so in the Stillwater office, there was just this huge file cabinet full of like 80 years black and white images, had captions on the back with locations, and times change, and it's sort of like, well, what are we going to do with there's like kind of space constraints. And so we worked with, and it's sort of like a similar story like in conservation districts too, like a lot of the districts, they had offices and there'd be like a file cabinet or file folders full of these images, and it's sort of like, oh, it's great that we have these, but like what do we do? And like a lot of stuff like this just gets tossed in the trash. There's like an office move or like new office manager, and they don't understand the significance. So we worked with the NRCS and the districts, and so we got the images, and we worked with the Oklahoma Historical Society, and they went through this pile, so like over 10,000 images, kind of pulled out duplicates, and then like saved the originals in the archive in Oklahoma City, and they digitized everything, and now they're on the gateway to Oklahoma history. And amazing website is free. Oklahoma Historical Society, if you're interested in having a look at this on the gateway to Oklahoma history, just Google that, and you can type in Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society collection and have access to these 10,000 images. And there's a lot of really great ones. There's a photo from like the mid 1930s of like SCS employees in the Guyman Field office, and they're all like in gas masks because there's like a dust storm going on.
I've seen that actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a famous image, but it's kind of gives you like a flavor of what these people had to deal with. So that's just one example. We've also done 55 oral histories with like conservation leaders like around the state. We partnered with OSU's oral history research program, and they've they have they're professionals in sort of the art of collecting and oral history. And so they've worked with us, and there are people who have done the interviews, and they've transcribed them and archived them, and they're available through the OSU Library's website. And so that's been an amazing resource too. And that's been like a lot of fun. And, like artifacts, like you ask about artifacts, and like those are challenging because people do, it's sort of, and, you two are familiar with the challenges of running like a museum, somebody's like, well, we have this farm implement, and, something that's designed to be pulled by a team of horses or like a tractor. And it's like, well, yeah, that's an interesting piece of the history of technology, but it's sort of like, I don't know what to do with this, And so we kind of held off on that kind of stuff a little bit because it's just, we don't. So one of our strengths as an organization is we don't have like a location. There's sort of like, we don't have like an overhead, like,
no
sort
brick
of
and mortar.
No, that's what I was kind of looking for.
Yeah.
Yes. And so like, we don't really have a place for that sort of stuff. But when we do sort of, any important documents or, like photographs, we certainly would be interested to like have a look at those. And we would work with the Oklahoma Historical Society to have them like archived there if that were to be something that needed to happen. So, yeah, I'm not sure. It's so hard to think of like a most interesting. I could pray, but I think it's all interesting, honestly.
Yeah, sure, most definitely. Well, I found what the photography exhibit that you guys put together, that we hosted at the museum here in Woodward, was fascinating. I mean, it was informative, and you coupled it with pictures, and I'm such a visual person. I got to have those pictures to really be able to digest the information that I read, especially when it comes to things like that. But I loved that. I thought it was cool, and the way that you guys were sharing it through the different organizations and museums that you shared it at. We were happy to host it in our agriculture exhibit. We have a specific building set aside for that, and I felt like it really tied in because we have some of those implements, right? We have a space to house them, but understand, like, we're in the same boat sometimes where it's like people offer us things and we're like, well, unless it has a very strong like historical significance, a story that ties it to the area. It's like we got to be picky and choosy on some of that stuff ourselves, just because space. It's huge.
Yeah, everybody seems to want to dump their great grandmother's piano.
Yeah. Yes, that's essentially.
Can't tell you how many pianos we get offered.
Yeah. So that challenge kind of proposes as a little bit everywhere, I believe, but. Pictures can speak 1,000 words, I think, too. So the fact that, you guys are open to that. I also, Sam, because I follow you guys extensively because I very much believe in the mission and want to support that. But I see, you sharing the information using platforms like social media, especially Facebook and Instagram, to share those stories, to share those messages to people that may not be able to or don't know how to access that information. And you guys do quite well. So I wanted to, give you a good old boy on that because I really enjoy those.
Yeah, that's been so yeah, I just would like to, I guess that this would be a good spot to give like a plug if anybody is
please
like still listening and is interested in Oklahoma's conservation history. Please follow the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society on we are on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and we also have like our own website. So you can just Google Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, and you should find those links. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been some work too, but
Sure.
it's been like an initiative for us just to sort of try to. We're at a point in our organization's evolution, where we want to take the initiative more to like tell the story. I think so our mission is to collect, preserve, and share Oklahoma's conservation history, and we're still doing all of those things, but feel like trying to like lean into like the sharing piece. And for better or worse, right now in our society, like a lot of people's eyeballs are just on their phones and on social media, and so that's kind of where just trying to like place these ideas and so kind of stories in a place where people will see them. And it's been a lot of fun. If anybody who's done this kind of work, kind of social media, like it's kind of maddening. You put like a few hours into something, you do the research, and then it's like, you've had 27 views, 2 likes. But that's not the way to really. One of our goals too is to develop like a new book on the history of Oklahoma conservation. So I kind of view this work as sort of providing sort of like a sketch pad for that larger project.
Right. And that's great. I mean, that's funny you say that, because Mr. Robin and I actually took he was doing Facebook posts, and he was pulling pictures from the collection or posts from the newspaper and writing these little historical posts about it, adding a little bit of fun, ha ha he he type of stuff, really to try to, captivate people. And we took those posts that he'd done for years and put them in a book that we call the Tales from the Plains Indians and Pioneers Museum. And it's basically just his Facebook posts that tell the story of the history. And we curated him, more him than I, because he is the real historian here. I'm just the coattail rider. I'll be there one day. But we put those in a book and kind of tells the history. So we kind of killed 2 birds with 1 stone, using those stories, putting them in the book to be able to share and have forever. Because what if Facebook just goes away? What if it blows up one day? I mean, it's true. It's a real thing.
No, yeah,
It could
I agree.
become obsolete.
Yeah, and we all might be better if it does. I think it's
yeah. Somebody needed to say it. Good for you, Sam. Somebody needed to say it.
Yeah, but I agree with you. It's important, I think, to like Facebook or any of these social media, they're just like one channel. And I think you kind of got to keep like your core sort of like you're using these as tools to deliver the message that you want to deliver, but it's not like, you can deliver that same content like in any number of ways, like through like a podcast or like a public talk or like a book. So that's kind of the way I view it. And, it's been fun trying to learn about like what works and what doesn't and what, people respond to and they don't. And it's been interesting that, and like, we've seen, like our following has increased. So it's been fun to,
to see that. And the thing about, social media, the algorithms are forever changing. So when you say maddening, that's really what it comes down to. Because and I try to tell people, if you're not engaging with those pages, then they can't engage with you. So going and liking those pages, or even just making a comment or liking that post, will kind of reform your algorithm to where you're going to see more from that organization. So if you want to do anything to help organizations that are striving to reach you, is to engage back with them. Don't just see it, read it, and flip by. You know what I mean? Actually make the like, go connect with the page. And a lot of people are getting their information from those platforms. And so, organizations like you and even the museum were forced to do that to stay relevant, to stay connected with these people who are seeking that out. But another thing I think people don't realize is you can also become members of these organizations. I know that there's a membership that you guys also provide that people can join. It's very minimal cost. that kind of ensures your support and connection to that organization. And, for the museum, it's $35 a year. And you'll get our newsletter. You'll get an email from time to time. I'm not going to spam you, although I'm very tempted to some days. But, just ways like that. If you care about something, show it,
Yeah. And I would like to give a shout out to all of our members and supporters, because we've been very fortunate to have a lot of support from the conservation community here in Oklahoma, and like those dollars allow us to have like matching funds to go apply for grants, and so it kind of like we can use that support and like leverage it to like accomplish a lot more. And so that's that's been such a critical piece what we've done, and trying to like serve the members and also be good stewards of the money that they like invest with us.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people understand. They're like, oh, just go get a grant. I don't think a lot of people, unless you've done that and you've gone after grants, understand that matching piece. There are very few grants, I feel like, and they're out there that don't have some sort of matching, whether it's minimal with like 10% or if it's upwards of a, exact match. We'll give you 10,000 if you can get 10,000. And so, I think talking about it here, and hope people kind of get a little bit more grasp about that. The money that you spend, and like you're saying, you're trying to be good stewardess and spend it well. And I think people can see that in what different organizations are doing. You can kind of tell if they're spending it wisely or not. But harboring those funds to be able to, like you said, do more with it. There people are like, do more. Well, at the end of the day, it takes money to do more. And I hate that it does, but that's the belly of the beast. And so even your little bit contribution as becoming a member at whatever the cost is a year can be huge for an organization and kind of moving through their mission and what they're trying to do. So double thanks to those people.
Absolutely. Completely agree.
Okay. Well, Sam,
go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna. We were thinking the same thing. If there's,
we sure appreciate you spending part of your Sunday with us, and
of course,
it's really
been great talking.
It was great having you on here, and we look forward to continuing at some point.
Yeah, would love to find a way to like partner with you guys and. In the future, perhaps we could do a project on conservation, like in Woodward County and Northwest Oklahoma.
Great.
Yeah, that we'd be open to the conversation for sure. And Sam, if there's anything else that you feel like you want to add to this, here's the opportunity. I know you've kind of plugged the Oklahoma Conservation Historical Society, but if there's anybody else you want to thank, any extra plugs, this is a time. So if not, it's cool, but we never know.
Yeah.
what you might want to share.
Yeah, I would just like say if anybody out there listening has like any interest in this issue set, if you're like a landowner, like a farmer or like a rancher, and you're not in contact with your conservation district, or you have like a resource concern, like reach out to your district, and they'd be happy to help. And that's probably the front door into conservation programs.
Great.
Yeah.
And in Oklahoma. So, I just want to, I guess, plug the importance of the conservation partnership. Like Soil Conservation Service personnel used to joke that the name of their agency was the Secret Conservation Service, because nobody had seemed to have ever heard of them or knew what they did. But, it's like really valuable work sort of just out there kind of manning like the battlements of like natural resource protection and the sort of our food and fiber really depends on that work. So that's just my closing charge, I suppose. But yeah. thanks again. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for your time, and we hope that this podcast can charge you forward in your efforts and the efforts that the districts are making and the OCHS as well. So thanks again, Sam. You've been great. And we'll talk soon, maybe partner at some point. So until then, have a great afternoon.
Likewise. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, Mr. Robin, what a great, interview with Sam Stalcup. Right?
Yeah. No, it was really great.
Very informative.
Very informative. And I think at times we were kind of we were stretching his comfort level for talking about, because he is a historian, not a soil scientist. And we were throwing kind of a few soil science questions at him.
A little bit.
But he was a good sport about it.
He was.
He responded as best he could. And
but there is a small connection between, soil conservation and, soil scientists. And so even though that he isn't one, he has kind of a general understanding of it, enough that he could explain what it was to you fine folks.
And we always learn from the past, right?
And we do. To live more fully in the future, we have to understand our past, is what Dr. Mikey always says. I'm not officially, but I will be. Just you wait. First, I got to get my master's.
I can't wait.
I mean, Dr. Mikey.
You think she's difficult to deal with now?
Yeah, wait till I'm a
PhD.
My dissertation is going to be, I don't even know yet. That's a good question, because I got to figure out it has to be in what I want to do, right?
Oh. Did I ever tell you mine?
That you never did?
That I never did?
I'm just kidding. Yes.
I had one.
No, what was it going to be?
Well, my advanced degree would have been literature.
Right. That's naturally.
And I was going to do the propensity of latter 19th century French novelists to use footnotes in fiction.
Oh.
Because I'd actually made a study of this.
That's very, very interesting.
Well, anyway.
That's really interesting. We're going to have to talk more about that amongst ourselves.
If you have any questions for either Mikey or myself about today's episode or any other darn thing, you can email us.
Or you can be like some people who live here locally and just show up and ask us questions to our face. That's fun, too.
Yeah.
If you're a local and you want to pop on over to the office.
You can get to me, particularly if you're a spammer, because that's the only people that email me, as Mr.Robin at MrRobinshood.com or Mikey at MrRobinshood.com.
That's why people they email me because I don't have a dot.
Yeah. Also, you can find us on Facebook at Mr. Robin's Hood Podcast. As always, you can reach out to Mikey or me via Podophone at 580-827-1113. Maybe you just want to get something off your chest, or you're feeling some butt pain because of something we said during the podcast,
and
give us a call.
I feel like nobody calls us about the times we give them butt pains.
Yeah.
I know we do.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, please don't send pictures of your butt. We're not interested.
I am visualizing that.
She might
I'm
actually.
Like, wait, that actually sounds intriguing. I don't know.
Okay, send her your pictures of your winking Wally or whatever. Okay, so
please don't. I'm just a very curious person, and I don't need help with that. Okay. So just don't.
Just do it. Okay. Unless, of course, you're a deranged farmer intent on plowing up every bit of ground you can and letting it blow into Mr. Robin's fences. If that's the case, please talk to Mikey before you talk to me.
I'm your mediator.
Oh, okay. Still,
talk to me.
Just keep in mind that we aren't likely to answer, but you can leave a voicemail. Text us if you have a question, concern.
We'll text you back, but we won't call you.
What? Just don't be a
you know what
dick about it.
DICK.
In the meantime, plowing dick about it. How's that?
Don't be a plowing dick about it.
Don't do
that.
Tell all of your friends to stream this podcast so their lives depend upon it.
Because not only is it funny, it's informative and it's riveting and it's all the things you wanted it to be. So listen.
And all the cool kids listen.
And they do.
You can find them wherever you usually find that sort of nonsense. Don't. We're back on Spotify, but on the audio side only. iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, the Podbean app, Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Listen Notes, and Podchaser. You can also stream them directly from our Podbean website at mrrobinshoodpodcast.podbean.com for free. So we'll close now.
As we always do.
As we always do.
Stay hungry, stay foolish, and most importantly, stay weird. Later.